Uncorked in conversation, where the stories start flowing. Ashley and Dawn keep the good vibes going. Grab your moment, take a sip, tune in. Uncorked in conversation, let's begin.
Hi, I'm Ashley Martin, President and CEO for NIBCO.
And I'm Dawn Bloch, Vice President and Chief People Officer.
And we are here with Steve Malm, Executive Chairman. Thank you for joining us, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So the first question we always have to ask our guests is, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking rosé today.
All right. All right. Well, cheers, and thank you for being our guest today.
Yes.
Thank
Cheers.
You. Cheers.
So today we thought, we'd talk to you about your long career with NIBCO. You've been here almost 30 years, which you will celebrate in June, which we're very excited about. But you've made such an impression on the company. And so we wanted to talk about that leadership journey that you've been on and what things you think you've really left NIBCO with.
Well, very good. Well, first of all, long journey makes it sound like a long journey, but it seems like a short one, actually.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing because it's been an enjoyable one for sure. And actually, I started my career a little late by standards of somebody coming right into the company from school, something like that. And so to go 30 years has been exciting for me because I started really mid-career when I joined NIBCO originally back in must have been in the 90s now, I guess.
Yep.
Have to run the math backwards. But yes, indeed. No, it's been a lot of fun and just a great place to work all that time.
So, I want to hear a little bit about your career. So what were you originally hired to do?
Great question. I came in as Vice President of International, and that would have been my trade, if you will, before I came to NIBCO. When I got out of school, I became a stockbroker initially, then went back to grad school and got a degree in international management. So that badged me as an international person, if you will, and actually helped me, get on that path towards international, which I did. I worked for Parker Penn for a time, and then joined a Kohler company, the same industry but slightly different product, and worked for them for a number of years, and actually joined NIBCO to really help continue our growth in the international arena. So I came in as the international person. And career's kind of taken some other different turns in the road subsequently, but that's what I was hired to do originally.
And I remember that, by the way.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
great.
when I started, that was the role that you were in.
There we go.
We're just a couple of years apart in tenure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I was over in Eastside initially. The
Oh, I
international
didn't
group
know that.
had that prestigious position over there. Lots of parking. It was great.
No fighting for front row
No
there.
fighting for front row. And the building was just being finished then, too, to be honest. It was the tail end of the extension and the
Yeah.
renovation over here. And a lot of the people had already moved back. But International was over in that other area there, right on the front end of the distribution center there, and where the R&D lab is today. So.
You said your career's had a lot of different twists and turns. Even here at NIBCO, right? You've had a lot of different positions. But what was the position you enjoyed the most?
My current position.
Okay, great answer.
No, if you think about it, like I say, I came in to run international initially for NIBCO, and NIBCO, to their credit, has been doing international for decades, many decades, and a very professional exporter. And many people don't know how much experience we have overseas with subsidiary activity, but we all but built the copper fittings business worldwide. We would have had operations in Europe that have since become about 1/3 of that market over time, and several operations in Latin America as well. And so international was really, part and parcel of what NIBCO had been doing for many years. And at that time when I came in, and it was, you may remember Slurp 2000, those of you that have been at NIBCO for a
I
while,
do.
would have been a very, very major strategic plan we did, and probably one of the first really long-range plans, right, that NIBCO would have undertaken. And the perspective was, okay, let's look long-term, and what do we want to work on? Well, international was one of those. And my job would have been to bring about 25% of NIBCO sales into the international arena. So let's say several $100 million at the time should have come from international in that plan. And that's what we set out to do. And one could say, well, why didn't you do it? Well, we were close, and we were actually working on some acquisition work that would have brought us a prominent position in Europe and would have set us well on that path towards those goals that were in the original slurp. Now, as luck would have it, there were some things happening in the industry that literally days before we signed on for that opportunity, it turned out that they were going to be bogged down in legal work for a lot of
Oh,
years.
wow.
And so we said, well, not sure we signed up for that. And so just timing, just worked out that we didn't do that, but that really would have achieved that one goal on Slurp 2000 to make that happen. Now, subsequent to that, though, we've done other reflection, and we would have started Slurp 2012 maybe would have been the next one, and started doing the work of, okay, where do we go next as a
Mhm.
company and so forth. And really, we decided that's when the lean journey would have gotten started, and we said, let's turn to operational excellence. We're good at what we do. We can be even better, et cetera, et cetera. And the international side, we said, and it's hard to say you don't want to be an international, right? It sounds really interesting, intriguing. The world has to be fabulously wonderful, right? Well, international is tough world. It's tougher than your home market, so it does require that extra effort. So at that time with Slurp 2012, we said, well, we think we got a lot of opportunities domestically. It's where our brand name is the strongest, where our customers are, our factories. Let's pivot to that. And international, we're not saying, no, we're not going to do it. We don't care, et cetera. We just say our priority was going to be our domestic business and equally as important, our domestic production, our manufacturing. So at that same time, we would have been doing the lean journey. It had started off in the early 2000s. By 2004, 2005, somewhere in there, we were heavy into the early days. And I think that turned out to be a great decision because a lot of what we do today, the processes, the positions of all our manufacturing plants have been heavily impacted by that decision. And not that we couldn't have done both. We could say, well, we could have done international too, but we chose to prioritize domestic and chose to prioritize ourselves, if you will. Let's prioritize what we do well because we knew we could do it even better. So that became the mantra of that second slurp, at least during my tenure. There was probably strategic plans before then. So at that time, my career at NIBCO would have pivoted before. I was still responsible for international, but my energy would have been going into supporting that effort along with everybody else at NIBCO at the time. And then we can count off, okay, what did that lead to? What, et cetera. Lots of exciting things really would have started in the early 2000s period that we've reinforced up to and as recently as today, right? So that's kind of where my career shifted, if you will. I wouldn't call it a 180. My experience, I did run a European operation for many years. That included multiple factories and multiple acquisition integrations. So I would have had that basic business experience that could be applied anywhere. So whether you're doing that in Europe or in the United States, that kind of work is kind of the same. But it seemed natural for me to pivot to the operational or excellence journey that we decided to sign up for sometime in the early 2000s period. And Dawn, you were here at that time, so
Yes,
you
I
you would have
definitely
remembered a
was.
lot of
Yeah.
that.
I remember all the things that you're talking about.
Yep.
It's taking me back for sure.
So it didn't seem like a 180 or anything. It was just, oh, here's the next order of business. And it seemed like a natural transition. I think because of my merger and acquisition experience, we would have been doing some at that time. And then I would have been working on some of that as a head of international. It's a little
Right.
weird. You say, why are you doing this? Well, I was doing it because I had experience and would have helped the team at that
Sure.
time. And the early days, I would have led to things like Tolco at the time.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. I remember for a period of time you were going back and forth
Indeed.
running Toco out in California.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's not, I mean, clearly was not your original assignment, right? So guess did you like that time? I mean, it would have been hard traveling back and forth, but it was an acquisition that we did and we tried hard to, integrate. So I guess tell us a little bit about that
Sure.
one.
Well, I think from a religious perspective, you call that penance. Because I would have helped lead and be probably largely responsible for the Tolco acquisition, and that we spotted that target, we worked on it, we bought it, and so forth. And then once you own it, you have to run it.
Yes.
And in this case, and then I would have gone back to my day job, to be honest, after that. But at that time, Tolco, great company as it turned out to be, and culturally a good fit and so forth. But they would have had industry challenges that we learned more about as we got involved. And a particular change would have been, if we talk about tariffs nowadays, at that time they changed tariffs on the steel industry way back then.
Okay.
And Tolco bought all of their raw material out of Korea because they're a West Coast producer. Our domestic steel is East Coast, and it's not terribly competitive either. So long story short, the hanger business was about 85% domestic production when we bought them. With that duty change, it just automatically and almost instantaneously turned it into an import market
Oh,
because
okay.
people could buy the imported hanger for cheaper than we could buy the steel out of Korea, plus duties, take it into California, make it
Manufacture
into a.
Yeah.
So it was, kind of a dramatic shift. But in terms of me going out there, that's a great story too, because okay, we bought the business. We're about a year into it, and integration could be tricky. And this was a family business. Those of you that don't know Tolco, culturally, it was run by a football coach. And the gentleman had won several state championships in California. So a good high school football coach. Actually got hired as head football coach at Long Beach State. So made the jump into career college coaching. That's a big deal. And then at that time, it was roughly in the early 80s when the whole industry was suffering one of their downturns, and it really impacted contractors in particular. His family business were fire protection contractors. They went bankrupt during that crisis, and all they had left was Tolco, the hanger business. So somebody had to come save the family business, the hanger business. So the football coach had to leave coaching and run Tolco.
Wow.
Now, some 20-some years later, he did a great job of that, rose to the occasion. But we were sitting across the table talking to an owner, and he had a couple of other brothers, everybody's involved in the business, but it was a football coach that had the corner office, called out the plays and so forth, ran the business, and he wanted to retire. And he said, and he admitted, this is not really my passion in life. I did this out of obligation. But I'm getting at the point where I want to go into my retirement, and to do that, we have to sell the business. Any of the kids could have bought it. He might have done that, but he knew the money wasn't there. It had to come from outside. And he also told me, well, my children, they'll be fine. Economically, they're going to get my money. but I'm going into
Eventually
retirement.
they'll get it.
I need cash. So that just says the culture that we had there. And as a result, the absence of the coach really made a difference in the operation of the business. Some businesses, you may delegate a lot of authority. It can work fine. The boss isn't there. The business runs. This one, everybody would look to the corner office when decisions had to be made, and that would have been the coach. In our world, we had those people report to about 6 or 7 different departments at NIBCO. So kind of the antithesis of what you need to do when the coach isn't there anymore. You don't want each position coach reporting to 6 different people. So in any event, 1 year into it, not going so good, kind of a lot of confusion. I had a meeting with Rex in the boardroom here. I kind of sized up. I knew the business well, and I said, well, Rex, I think we got X, Y, and Z we need to work on. And then I say, first order of business, we got to get a general manager there, because that's what the business needs. The team needs that. And someday maybe they won't, but now they're looking for coach. And there's no coach. And he said, yeah, I agree. He said, I think you're right. Good assessment. You got to go do it.
Well,
Here's
you
an
kind of walked into
opportunity.
that
I
one.
did. I set myself up for that. That was probably Friday. Monday morning, I was in the coach's office, and I was commuting back and forth. But I enjoy that. I love business in all its chosen forms. This was really another family business when you get right down to it, with all the nice things that come along with that, and certainly engaged workforce and that sort of thing. So, I gladly did that, but that was a unique pivot. And
Was that your first NIBCO promotion?
I'm not sure it was a promotion back then. I think it was let me explain a little bit, Don, how promotions can work sometimes. It might
was
have
an
been
opportunity.
let's call it an addition to the portfolio. But promotion, I don't remember if those words were in there at the time.
That's fair.
Well, Well, just to be clear, now if that happened, Dawn would have sent out an email
Well,
for
there we
you.
go.
There would have
Yes,
been an
yeah, well,
announcement.
and
It
Rex
would have
probably
been
wanted
called
to
a
make sure I didn't make it an even bigger mess before the announcement went out. But yeah, and we joke a little bit about it, but I love that part about NIBCO. And we talked about Todd. He just recently retired from a 42-year career,
Yep.
but he was an engineer. Came right out of school and was
Yep.
doing engineering work. Just right out of the box, and somehow ends up as our ex-CFO
Yeah.
some years later. And so that happens all the time. I know product managers that came out of the plant and plant managers that went into product management and people moving into finance. The IT department, half of those are non-IT people that came from other parts of the building, right? So I think that's the exciting part of what we do here at NIBCO. It's really the individual and the talent capability,
Yeah.
not the pedigree.
Right.
Sometimes you need a pedigree. If I go to see my doctor, I'd just soon see the certificate on the wall in that case. But other than that, no. Can we create people to do a job? And a lot of times that works out great. They know NIBCO already. They move into a new role, and that's all this was really. It was well within my wheelhouse to go do that, and it was part time. I still had my other responsibilities, but we do that all the time and with great success. So.
Speaking of success, you've obviously had a very successful career and tenure here at NIBCO. Can you share with us one failure that you would say shaped you any more than any one success did?
Love that question because I love failure.
Yeah.
And let me define that on the front end first. And then I'll struggle to say, well, because I can't in my mind remember, when did I fail? How do I find that in my background? But no, seriously, it's good if we're failing.
Yeah.
We shouldn't fear failure because if you're not failing, some of the time you're not doing enough. You're not trying hard. You're not trying new things.
Right.
And you're not going to hit, nobody bats 1,000. And no individual does either. Now, hopefully your failure doesn't end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, right? So we always want to try to fall short of that, and it rarely does. But I think as I look at my career, really, I see points where things maybe move in a different direction or something happens, but I never really classify it as, failure, and that led to something else. I'm trying to think of a Rocky moment where if I just go back and I trained harder, and by Rocky 7, I finally won the fight or something like that. I haven't really seen my career, go along that path. And yet I've seen it change. And every change almost always is for a better tomorrow, so you pivot to that new opportunity set, and whether it was because of failure or just opportunity presented itself to you directly, it's almost always a good thing. And it's certainly invigorating and exciting and so forth. So I look at my career as a lot more of that. But then if you use the term failure, I don't shy away from that and say, no, this project was a failure. This opportunity didn't work out the way we'd hoped. The only thing I always ask is, have we learned from it?
Right.
I'll give you an example. We write off inventory now, and that's not an exciting subject, but we'll do a list and say we want to, write this inventory off. And I'm kind of always slow to do that because once we've paid for the inventory, we own it, and we very rarely get a lot of value back. When we go to sell a box of whatever, it's not going to be worth what we paid for that box full of valves or whatever it might be. Copper you can melt, but almost everything else almost costs more to scrap, right? So I always say, well, no problem, and I don't yell, I don't scream, I'm not a chair thrower by nature, but I would say, what can we learn from this? Okay, here's a list of inventory we want to write off. At the very least, let's get a learning lesson from it. Why this product and what happened and what could we do different and so forth, because it becomes a learning opportunity. Costs are the same, whether you learn or not.
Right.
Why not learn? And I think all of our activities within business are basically of a similar fashion. So if we failed in a project, no problem. We do post audits of every product, right? Every new product.
Yep.
It's full gate 5. Okay, we're done. It's launched. What did we learn? And I'd like to think that every one of them is, well, we didn't forecast enough. we lowballed our
Mhm.
forecast and it's been, so much more
Yeah.
successful than we expected. That's rarely the case. But we could always say, well, what could we have done different? What have we learned
Right.
for the next project? What can we learn to do it a little bit better next time?
Mhm.
And that's a positive thing. You shouldn't look at it, oh gosh, it's failure. It's
Right.
really that chance to learn. And I think in my career, I can't think, I'd love to have one and say what a colossal
Mhm.
failure this was, but I've never been escorted out the door by a security guard. So, and at my level, sometimes a big failure might be the
Might
result.
be the
So,
result.
so
Yes, that's true.
successful career. Yeah, so far I'm still here and I have a key to the door and life's good. But I think as an organization, I don't think we run from failure. We're not the type of organization that obsesses over that. But I think we are one that we say, well, what can we learn? Yeah, let's lessons learned. Great.
Mhm.
Take that into consideration the next time around. And that can be true for the individual, for a project, new product development,
Yeah.
IT project, whatever it
A
might
a
be,
full
right?
team,
Full,
right?
absolutely. Or a whole organization, a
Yeah.
plant
It's how we
organization.
continue to evolve
There
and
we
get
go.
better.
And that gets to the continuous improvement
Mhm.
core value. If we go back to what I said about the lean journey in the early 2000s, that's just a continuation of the company's core values, almost all of them, because
Yes.
continuous
Mhm.
improvement for sure. But how do you do that? Through teamwork.
Yep.
The integrity part, you almost have to be born into it, right? That has to be there. But even there's an element of integrity that goes with that continuous improvement mantra too. The integrity to say, yeah, well, just be honest about it, be clear,
Yeah.
and accept, let us know, communicate, and so forth.
Mhm.
So the teamwork, continuous improvement, integrity, all works, very closely together. And safety for sure. Throw that in there because a lot of times the improvements can
Absolutely.
go towards that part of our
Yeah.
business, which we always say is job one.
Mhm.
And lately, philanthropy will throw that one in there too,
Yes.
which,
Yes.
I think is a nice adder to what's something NIBCO have been doing for many years anyway. But we used to call it our fifth core value, and now it's
Now it's
our fifth core
official.
value.
Yes.
And I love that Milwaukee Valve and Mekonorka have taken on that
Bingo.
core value as
Mhm.
well. And we get to see that with what they've been doing with United Way and the American
Mhm.
Heart
Yeah.
Association. So I just love that we've been able to expand that core value as
Mhm.
well.
Yep, me too. And that's another point. Even everything we acquire, we embrace. They're
Yes.
really more like in-laws than acquisitions, right? Now,
Mhm.
in-laws come in all flavors,
That's
I
right.
get that. But aren't in-laws family too?
Yes.
If in-laws come to the family
Mhm.
picnic, it's family.
That's correct.
And that's really what we do when we acquire, even Tolco. I've got
Mhm.
lifelong friends from Tolco, and some of them are still shareholders, and so forth. So I think that's really neat about NIBCO too. And I guess there's a certain human element to it that we bring to business that is there. It's in our core values, but also reflected in what
Mhm.
we do and how we do it. So I struggle. I wish I could come up with the big
It's
failure,
okay.
but
That was great. No, that's perfect. Thank
So
you.
it seems like a lot of your career, mergers and acquisitions has been a big part of it,
Mhm.
right? We talked about Tolco, but I would say, the last 10 years of NIBCO, right? We've done several Webstone, Sure Steel, Milwaukee Valve, and Matco Norca.
Yes.
Um, I guess you've really led the charge on that, and that's been great for our growth. How do you see NIBCO continuing to grow?
Well, I think acquisitions are going to be potentially a big part of it. We're in an industry, and the good news is that there's that potential and so
Mhm.
forth. The bad news is we're in a GDP growth industry if we do nothing, and potentially some degradation. If you do nothing, you could gradually slide
Mhm.
backwards because you get negative momentum. If you're not going forward, you may stand still,
Mhm.
or worse, it just kind of starts to roll back downhill a little bit. And if nothing else, we see in the new product arena area, new products are going to surround you and cannibalize some of your base business if you don't act. So the challenge for NIPCO going forward is to be conscious of that. We are.
Mhm.
Our new product development is there to keep us relevant when new products are happening in our space. But even with that, if you're going to grow as a company in a GDP growth company environment, it's going to be tough if you're not doing mergers and acquisitions. Now, what I like about NIBCO is we're not financial engineers, not what we do for a living. We're not a private equity firm and so forth. We can understand what those firms do and how they approach mergers and acquisitions, but that's not us. We're operators. And so everything we buy, we always take that. Even Tolko, we're going to have to run the place. And if they need a coach, we're going to have to put a coach in. And everything we do, we approach with that. And equally as important, we embrace the workforce that comes with the acquisition. And since we are manufacturers and like being and so forth, a lot of times we're there to support that as well, as opposed to, well, let's just move everything and close the doors and this and that. We're not financial engineers. We're operators. Now, all that said, let's see what has the growth been with those acquisitions over the last 10 years, let's say. And it's probably 30-40% more growth than without them.
Yep.
Right? Something like that. NIBCO would be under $1 billion for sure, well under $1 billion.
Yes.
And we're comfortably above $1 billion now, and not looking back. So I think it's got to be a big part of what we do, but I think it will also be done a la NIBCO. And I'd also add, we're very customized in the approach we take. When we buy a company, we tailor the integration to the opportunity at hand. And a lot of companies don't. Private equity, they don't care. They've got a formula they use. It gets implemented almost immediately, and they're on to the next one. They're doing, just more and more and more. And sometimes that leaves quite a raft in its path. And a lot of times those companies end up being sold again, right? They're flipped or whatever you want to say. But that's not why we do it in the first place. We do it for the long haul, and we embrace the people and so forth. So, you go to a Webstone. I think a Webstone is NIBCO now, right?
Yeah.
It's, and on up Milwaukee Valve and Matco Nork SVF included, right? So I think that's in our future. We don't have to do that. But if we want to grow and we're not satisfied with just, well, yeah, they're going to build so many homes, we'll be there, or how many more office towers, even data centers alone, won't create some hyper growth for NIBCO. We don't need hyper growth, but I think you need some growth to continue and to prosper as a company. If you look at NIBCO for generations, there's always been growth, right? You go back to Ross's day, I bet we're bigger now. I could pull the data out, but I suspect it's a bigger company. And there's always been an emphasis every generation on growth. And how do you do the growth and so forth. Nowadays, the M&A part is a good part of that formula. And I think we're good operators. So what value does NIBCO add in that equation? The ability to operate these kinds of companies well. Do not too much damage. A lot of acquiring companies
do no harm. Good call.
Do no harm.
Yes.
Got the Hippocratic Oath. And,
leave them better than how we found them, right?
Exactly right. And then let them get better. And I think Webstone's a great example of that. That was a great company when we bought them. They look even greater now when you look back and say, wow, we've been able to help each other and make that an even better company than we originally bought. And I think that'll be true for all of the acquisitions we do. We try to measure them so we like what we see. Tolko, I don't count as a failure of the M&A effort, if you will. It was well done. We did our due diligence, et cetera. We managed the business. We grew that business almost twofold and substantially improved the profitability. So from the standpoint of, well, did we make a mess of the place? No, we made a better Tolko, but market conditions were such, we had to decide, is this something we want to operate for another 100 years? And in Tolko's case, we felt we had to get much bigger to be more relevant in that space in a sea of importers, because the business had dramatically changed in terms of who does hangers, where do they come from. By then, it was all coming from Asia. And we would have needed that next big strategy, if you will, to keep that business going the way it should. So again, that's not failure either. That's just assessing the reality. And, it's in different corporate hands now. Then they're still operating. They're not in the same building. They're gone now. That company moved that. But
are they still in California?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And they were bought by another hangar company. And so forth. So to your question, Ashley, I think it's going to be a big part. It's never 100% of what we do, though, right?
Right.
To be honest, for a couple of slurps now, and we're into, I don't know how many of our 10-year slurps since I've been here, but quite a few, we always hesitated to put M&A in a slurp because you can't control when you can buy a company. Great properties come along occasionally, not daily. And unless you're in the business, I'm going to buy stuff. I don't care if it's a Burger King or the grocery store. Martin's for sale. Let's go buy it. That's not us. So it's very hard to plan for it. You can say, I want that to be a part of my planning perspective, but I can't put a timeline on it, and I can't predict how much, how big, where's it going to be, what's it going to be. So we never put it in slurp. Never even had one say, yeah, when 20% of our growth is going to come from M&A. Don't think we need to. But when the opportunity arises, we jump. And that way, all of us remember that it's our job to grow NIBCO and make it better and
Yeah.
stronger. If we never do another acquisition in our life, we still got to do our responsibilities, right?
Right.
Just
Right.
grow our business, make it better,
Mhm.
make it better than when you found it, and so
Yeah.
forth. So that's where the continuous improvement mantra comes
Mhm.
in, and that's a good thing for us to remember all the time. I love the M&A success we've had, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't want it to distract us from, well, we got a lot of people that their day job is to
Mhm.
make sure we're successful
Yeah.
into the future, and they can control that, right? We don't need another acquisition to
Yeah.
do that. But that said, we're getting good at it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
We are.
I think we should continue to exercise those muscles going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we have the cash flow. You know, at one
Yeah.
point early on, we were accumulating a lot of cash. After the Great Recession,
Mhm.
we were making, passbook savings rates on
Mhm.
many, many millions of dollars because we couldn't find ways to invest it back into the business.
Right.
That's very specific work. I'm going to go
Mhm.
add a machine at the factory.
Mhm.
So I think it's going to be a big part of our future, but I hope we never obsess on it like that's going to be the big savior.
Mhm.
The mothership is what matters,
Yeah.
and we bring those acquisitions, and they become part of the mothership, and we move forward. So
Mhm.
So we've talked about it. You've had a long career here at NIBCO and with Kohler in the plumbing industry. If you didn't do this, what would your other career path would have been?
boy,
Hmm.
my preferred career path would be this, to be honest. And let me back up. I was a stockbroker,
Yes.
not my favorite line of work. And I was a retail stockbroker. I think I could have been an institutional stockbroker, calling on people like NIBCO.
Yes.
Because in a business environment, I
Yeah.
find retail stockbroker, you're cold calling.
Mhm.
It's like selling insurance door to door. So it's really tough business.
Mhm.
And that was never my passion. Getting doors slammed in my face and
Right.
phones hung up and people swearing at me because they lost money in the market. All that
Mhm.
that didn't appeal to me. And I went into the stockbroker business with the movie version of stockbrokering is what I was going to do.
Mhm.
What you see in a movie,
Mhm.
I liked that, but the real work was really not so fun.
Mhm.
So in any event, once I got in and got my business degree and moved into international, I was selling pens. Love pens. It's kind of sexy. They come in different colors. You go to duty-free store conventions, and
Mhm.
you're there with the scarf people and the perfume people, and it's a wonderful
So
world.
like brooches, those
Yeah,
type of
or
pens. Okay.
watches, all that stuff.
Okay.
What a fun industry, right?
Mhm.
Loved it. Moved into toilets, not quite the same, a little less sexy maybe.
Just
Still
a little.
probably still
Uh,
sexier than our products.
Well, they have a showroom, and that's the
Yes, they
beauty part of
do.
that, and they come in
They have
different
shiny
colors.
things.
And they change
Yes.
the colors every year. So that was pretty fun. So moving into rough plumbing, some of the sexiness dissipates. No
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
But the necessity is still there.
Yeah.
But really,
Yes, if your plumbing breaks, people typically
people
fix
have to
it
have it, right?
Mhm.
quickly.
It's not
But
something they put off for a couple
Right.
months.
no,
and
for sure.
Yeah.
But really, it gets back to I love business. I think
Mhm.
I could enjoy almost any form of business. And the mechanics are very similar and whatnot. What's the big change from selling pens to making toilets
Mhm.
to making rough plumbing? Not much in terms of business activity.
Mhm.
But I just love the challenges that business present all the time, and never a dull moment. There's never a time where there isn't a crisis going on somewhere,
Mhm.
or more importantly, just the vast opportunities that are there that you never have time to get to all of them.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it keeps you juiced. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing this for Burger King or something.
You sound like the Luke Combs song. It's literally, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing this.
Yeah.
So like if he wasn't
That's
famous doing it, he'd still be doing it
There
like
we
in a
go.
bar, right? It's just a different version.
Exactly right.
Mhm.
And for me, it is, it's the people, it's the
Yeah.
challenge, it's just the learning, constant
The
learning.
constant change.
That's why I
Yeah.
love meeting new business people. Our customers, a lot of them are
Mhm.
private, owners, just small
Mhm.
business people, but every time you go see them, you learn stuff, right? And you get excited, and they're excited, so you get
Mhm.
excited, and really, that's what I like about, the business environment. And getting back to NIBCO, I love it because we don't have the bureaucracy or anything. This is what we do. This is our mission, And sometimes in bigger companies, maybe it's a little more medical, just
Mhm.
septic, whatever the term
Yeah,
might be, because certainly it can be where you lose sight of
right.
the mission. It's just business, but that's never the case here. There's people around everything we do too. Families that have their families have grown and gone to school based on the money they can make at NIBCO and working for sometimes
Yeah.
generations and so forth.
Mhm.
Same for our customers. So I get juiced at all that, and NIBCO has always just got that attitude. Hey, we're just going to keep doing new stuff,
Mhm.
climbing new mountains and so forth. So I'd be doing this, somewhere. It might even be for, maybe the local Burger King, and I could really make that one sing.
So, do you have a hobby or something that you like to do outside of work?
Great question. Now that one is oh God, what this guy's really got a sad life, because the answer is probably not. And I don't golf. I told you I was an international before.
Mhm.
My first job out of grad school, I was traveling probably 3 to 3.5 weeks a month.
Wow.
And then sometimes it was 3 week trips.
Wow.
You got one phone call a week because it was expensive to make long
Yeah.
distance calls. And I had, 6-month-old child or a 2-year-old plus
Mhm.
a newborn, et cetera. You, I probably should have my wife talk about this part of the phase. But in any event, I could just imagine back in those days, dropping my bags, saying, "Honey, I'm going to go golf," and spending five hours on the links.
Yeah.
After coming back from a 3 week trip,
You
and
might have gotten a look.
I might have gotten one of those golf
Yeah, more
clubs.
than that. Maybe a golf club to the head type
Exactly right.
thing.
But in any event, no, hobbies are the things I enjoy. Like I enjoy art and travel and
Mhm.
museums, and
Yes.
that's part of the learning part of that. I love that.
Mhm.
But is that something that I say, yeah, that's my hobby? I can't work tonight. I
Yeah.
gotta go to the museum. Not really. I would say what's taken that place now is family as they get older. Now my
Mhm.
kids have kids, and we got the grandparent thing going on.
Mhm.
That want to be job one, and I just love that. And I'm
So
able to do what I didn't do when I should have been doing when I was a young
Right.
parent. So
so how many grandchildren do you have?
well, I have 4 now. Make sure I count,
Mhm.
and one more on the way.
And when is the baby due?
Baby is due in July this year.
Very
Yeah.
exciting.
Congratulations.
So that's fun. But, I don't think I need the hobbies. I guess if I did, I'd have
Mhm.
one, and there are things I enjoy. I like
Mhm.
photography, things like that, but I wouldn't
Mhm.
carve it out and say, "Yeah, that's my hobby, and that's what I do in my free time." I don't think I have much free time and don't covet it. I'm probably out surfing
You
some
keep yourself
yeah,
busy,
surfing
yeah.
some nonsense of what Mueller is up to today or something if I got an odd moment. So
Well, I do appreciate the articles every once in a while
yeah,
that
there
you'll
you go.
you'll come across and send
Yeah, you
forward to
both
me.
get
Yeah.
peppered with those on occasion, don't you?
Yeah. I think it's great. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, your entire 30 years at NIBCO, you've always been leading
Mhm.
people. What is one thing about your leadership that you hope people say about you 10 years from now?
That's a great question. Let me put it in terms of, I think 10 years from now, a lot of times when we talk about people that were here
Mhm.
10 years ago,
Yep.
it's probably some sort of zinger like, oh, what a character that person was. If you think about it, I think the ideal leader at NIBCO is one that becomes part of the fabric of our success.
Yes. I
And that
agree.
river that flows down,
Mhm.
and you're not the sewage leak that went into the river,
Oh.
but you're a part of that flow
Yeah.
that made it happen. Because I think we have so many leaders at NIBCO, and they're all
Mhm.
important, right? So,
Absolutely.
in terms of where you are in the organization, doesn't matter as much as how have you performed in the role
Mhm.
required of you for the overall team to be successful. And I was thinking, like at Stewart's Draft, I remember we did an LMX3 back there in 1998, I think it was. And we actually invited some retirees back. So,
Oh,
That's a
wow.
great idea.
and we were doing a kind of an LMX3 is nothing more than a vision event, if you will.
Mhm.
And at that time, it would have been, gosh, we got this wonderful plan here at Draft. Never been more successful. The integration of all this internal production is there.
Mhm.
We're a world beater and so forth. So we were studying the next phase for Stewart's Draft, if you will. And a lot of the retirees are still out in the Shenandoah Valley or commutable distance anyway.
Mhm.
So we brought people back that volunteered. I don't think we paid them or anything, and they loved it, to be honest. But we probably arced back 35, 40 years in time with that group that came back, and we would have had other 25-year associates in that were
Yeah.
still working. So you can imagine the richness of the people we had. And so I've taken your question into that context. Some of them would have retired 8 years prior or whatever. And I could tell you I was thoroughly amazed with the talent of the people we had running the facility before the regime that we had back in 1998. And now 30 years later,
Yeah.
we look back to somebody who would have retired 12 years ago from that plant, and we'd be in awe as well, right?
Right.
So I would hope, number one, you don't want to have somebody look back and say, yeah, what a bozo that guy was. But beyond that,
I don't
if it
think you
is-
get that. I
No.
don't-
And I think the leadership responsibilities change over time. The river would have
Absolutely.
flown. So,
Yeah.
like I say, I would like to think they'd say, well, oh, yeah, I remember him.
Mhm.
But in the context of the fabric of the organization and where we were at that time and the accomplishments that we had at that time.
Mhm.
And I think that's, a sign of a good leader, particularly in a stable environment like NIBCO,
Mhm.
where corporations are changing people all the time. It doesn't matter. And you might have that hero, right? The person, Jack Welch at GE.
Mhm.
Many people don't realize after Jack Welch retired, the value of GE's dropped about 80%, 85%, something like that.
I did
Wow.
not know that.
And he handpicked a successor that was there 17 years, but didn't keep, the ball from rolling down the hill substantially, which makes you wonder, what did Jack do
Right.
before he left?
Yeah.
I mean, that shouldn't happen, right?
Mhm.
And perhaps part of that was maybe on Jack, right?
Mhm.
He didn't leave a sustainable GE, and it was probably a slowly evolving mess, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of shareholder destruction is unbelievable for somebody who would have been held up as, oh, that's the business person, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm going to fall into either of those categories. But I think, like I say, I'd just be proud if I'd be a part of that long history of success the company has had, and so many leaders that have come and finished their career here and left the business in good hands. I would hope I've been doing that in terms of preparing, for the future, and you don't want to be that person when nobody can find your files and can't do your job. What the heck,
Right.
we're all responsible for just making sure the thing keeps going, right?
Mhm.
And you want it to be better and better.
Yeah.
And the leadership of 10 years from now will be different. It's
It
not
will
going to
be.
be comparable. So,
Mhm.
so I'm happy with that anyway. Is that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
So I know you've worked with Rex and for Rex for a long time. I've tried to, in the other podcasts, get like different family stories or different funny stories about Rex. Do you have anything that comes to mind
Well, let's see.
that our listeners might not know?
Mhm.
Well, I'm still employed. I could get in trouble, right? So one has to be. I'm trying to think of an antidote, but I'd rather put it in the context of Rex,
Okay.
how he operates.
Yeah.
I've been a direct report for many years, part of the program, however you want to call it, worked with him and side by side and for him and all of the above, right? And I would say, number one, Rex, his management style is consensus management, and that's good. I think the Midwest nice element that is NIBCO is really a reflection of how Rex manages as well. Now, occasionally Rex will have things he's really interested in,
Yes.
and he will let you know. So consensus management works
To a
most of the time.
point.
Yeah. But there will be times where the coach in the corner
Yeah.
and we've had those moments too, where Rex, and he'll do that in a nice way. It's usually you'll hear him repeat it. Maybe the voice raises a little bit, but he'll redirect, the group back to, okay, yeah, I hear you. And he won't even say but it'll be like the but, and he'll bring the team there if there's something he really wants to drive, and he has done that. So I think my best story would be that empowers everybody, right? I mean, you don't go into a meeting with Rex, he won't have a bunch of people in a room and start berating everybody. Everybody will feel free to speak. Now, if he disagrees, he's more than likely maybe to take it out after the meeting too. If he thinks he's going to put somebody on the spot, he'll get the point across, but he'll judge whether he can do that in the meeting, if it's a safe space. throw the chair across the room, which we never do. But he's more than likely to take that outside of the meeting, and I've had those sessions with him too. So people love working for him as a result. They know they can speak honestly, openly, and so forth. If Rex has something he wants to drive home, he'll get it done, but he'll really try to get the team on board with it. He'll use his form of convincing when that's required. But it does make for teams that operate independently and feel responsible and enabled and all that sort of thing. And that opposite leader, really, you wait for the coach to tell everybody what to do, right? And that hasn't been Rex's management style. So he's a great guy to work for. Everybody, loves him for it. And that management style has really worked well for us, I think, over the years.
It does take a lot to get him mad, but you definitely know when he is
I've
mad.
had a few of those sessions.
Oh, I thought Alexis and I were the only people that could do that.
Oh, no. He got mad at me one time,
No,
and
me
I
too.
vividly remember it while Steve was talking.
He got
And I
mad at
kept
me.
flooding back to you.
It did. I was like, I'm so glad that was only that one time. You know it. Yeah,
No, you do.
Yeah, you know it when he's upset with you.
But then he feels bad when he gets mad at you, too. Did you notice that? He feels a little guilty
Yeah,
later,
I could tell. I think somebody brought something to my office the next day or something, from Rex,
Yeah, I know.
a little, what do you call that? A little,
Apology
apology
gift.
gift.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, apology gift. So
Sorry, I had to flame you.
That's
It
right.
was the right thing
But
to
here,
do.
we're good
but
still. We're good still. Let's move on now. Let's move past it. Well, I would say I know that you and Rex did a lot of travels together, and
Yes,
those
we
had
did.
to be fun. When Ashley and I were doing our tour for the 120th,
Okay.
Poland was one of the stops we made, and they have a lot of pictures of you and Rex on a visit. I think it was when they first opened.
Yeah.
Or there was a new machine or something they had brought in, and there was a ribbon cutting. But we were looking through all their photos, and we were like, "Oh my goodness, that's Rex and Steve!" So I know you had to have had a lot of fun travel opportunities
Oh,
with
we
him as
have
well.
indeed. And I could tell more stories there. I'll share just one. And
Okay.
It's relative to the culture over there, but we were in Korea. We were working on a joint venture there, in fact. And in Korea, it's, a lot of personal contact. Most countries are that way, I suppose. But in Korea, that involves going out and doing some drinking, too. And, it's pretty heavy drinking, but they don't force it down your throat. You know what I mean? It's
Oh,
just
that's nice.
hitting
Yeah.
the bars, so to speak. And in that case, we're kind of a private room, and they bring, booze in and this type of thing, and you're talking, doing business. And at this particular venue, at the end of it, they brought dessert in, which was fruit, including a watermelon, which they cut in half, diced up all the melon and so forth, and you all have this nice fresh fruit,
Yeah.
beautiful thing. And then they poured all the extra liquor into the watermelon. You
All
may
the different
recall doing that in
kinds?
college, for example. They have different names for that at college. But
Yes, there was a name for
beer,
that.
wine, liquor. Somebody had
Oh,
ordered vodka or
no.
whatever. All went into the vat there.
And then you're supposed to eat the
Eat it?
fruit.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to drink. The fruit's gone. What's left is
and then you
a watermelon
drink.
full of goo.
Oh.
Which neither Rex or I were, heavily into indulging in, but it was humorous anyway, because you say,
Yeah.
wow, that's a great way to end the meeting.
That's right. I would have been sick as a dog if I did that.
And just to put in context how late this session went, let's call it a negotiating session. So we
Yes.
could say, we could write it off as a business expense, right? So we get back to the hotel, and Rex says, well, why don't we just grab a quick drink before we go? We talk about the day. I said, sure. That got coded as breakfast on my bill.
Oh.
So that'll tell you what time we got in that night.
Oh.
my.
Oh. Well, that was a good story. I like
is a
that
good story.
I do
story.
too. I
Thank
like
you.
that.
But
Sorry.
lots of those, traveling through China with Rex.
Yeah.
We were at a vendor one time, and scorpion is on the menu over there, not uncommon.
Oh.
And we were talking to one of the vendors, and they served up scorpion. Rex kind of leans over. He said, Steve, are you going to eat that? And I said, Rex, these are vendors. We don't have to eat it. If it's a customer, we'd have to
Right.
eat it.
Right. True. You have a choice
Vendor,
here.
We've got some choice. Yeah, we've got some leeway here. But Rex is a great traveler. He loves travel from the
He
adventure
does.
standpoint. He was brought up by
Yes.
it. That was
Yeah.
one of Lee's passions, right? And he and the kids were, taken all over the world on adventure travel. Back in
Yeah.
the days when people didn't necessarily have the chance to, travel the world and see all these things. So he always had that passion for it, and always approaches, travel internationally as a new adventure. So glad you mentioned that. It
Yeah.
gets me thinking and smiling.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us.
Yes.
And and speaking on the podcast today. And I do want to apologize because I picked out this rosé and none of us drank it because clearly it is shitty. So I do want to
We've been
apologize
talking.
for
We'll
that.
catch up now.
I'm going to finish mine.
Me too.
But thank you, Steve, for
Yes.
joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very
Cheers.
much.
Cheers.